What is up, everybody? Here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, having ourselves a little special here, a little additional thing here tonight. You're used to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora being with you every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Well, we were allowed the opportunity for a live fantasy football draft look for a 2020 draft here in a Dynasty Startup League. And as you can see in the icon right below me, Mike Sofka is on the phones with us. You know Mike Sofka from every Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. He joins us for the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. We just had 3 amazing drafts for our leagues at the Wildcat Sports Pub. Thank them so much for that. And Mike is here with us with some bonus coverage as we have a live look in at a fantasy football draft to help in your coverage and help in our discussion. And you know how Mike and I are. There's all the work that we do from 10 to 11. Then we do more past 11. And now we decided to give you an extra show. So it's always pushing to do a little bit more and push the term here. I love my partner, Mike Sofka, doing everything he does here with us and appreciate him so much. So let's bring him in. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing very well. We got a live look in at this draft, so I want to mention some of these now. The picks are going from left to right on the screen. So first pick was Christian McCaffrey, second Saquon Barkley, 2 running backs, the top 2 in order of what Mike and I have told you here on the show. Then the first wide receiver off the board went Michael Thomas, and then quarterback Pat Mahomes has been drafted very high. He went in this one. Then back to running backs with Ezekiel Elliott and many people high on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Lamar Jackson was picked up by our very own Mike Sofka. And then the picks went Alvin Kamara, who is currently in a contract dispute with the New Orleans Saints. Travis Kelce was chosen in the first round as the first tight end off the board. This is a 16-team league, which means, if you're looking at this and saying, why was Travis Kelce taken so early? It's because of, maybe the threat of not having him on the back end. Dak Prescott was the 3rd quarterback taken off. That's a little bit of a questionable pick for me. Devontae Adams after that. Then Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, from what we can see here on the board. And Mike, what are your thoughts so far?
No, I think things are going kind of like I thought they would. I did agree with you on the Dak Prescott pick. This is a unique league. It's a 16-team PPR league. It's a dynasty startup. So we're going to have these guys, basically infinitum, so you got to be careful on who you pick. You want to pick youth a lot of times, but you also want to win right away, so there's a careful balance there. I did find it quite interesting that Dak Prescott did go right away. I'm in the middle. I'm at 1-7 at 16. Now, the first 3 rounds of this draft are going to go just like they are. They're not going to snake. And then after the 4th round, they're going to start to snake. So it's a unique opportunity, but this gives everybody the same fair shot the first 3 or 4 rounds. One key thing to mention with the quarterbacks going early here is that, you need 2 of them, basically. You need at least 2. There's a super flex, and what the super flex does, we have a flex in this league, but what the super flex is you're allowed to put a quarterback in there. And even with the 4-point touchdowns that this league has, 4-point passing touchdowns from the quarterbacks, you look at a guy like Patrick Mahomes or a guy like Lamar Jackson, you're way ahead of everybody else on the curve there. So that's why the quarterbacks are going a little earlier here. It's interesting dynamic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Seeing that the super flex position, obviously flex in our leagues in the Wake Up Call Fantasy Football Challenge are any concoction. You have 2 flex you could play per week. That could be any combination of tight ends, wide receivers, or running backs. Super flex allowing you the opportunity to play a quarterback in there. Mike, we can't see all the way to the right, I believe. So after Dalvin Cook, who was taken?
Let me see here. Let me roll back up here. After Dalvin Cook at 114, DeAndre Hopkins went.
Okay.
Then at 115, Tyreek Hill went. And then at 116, Joe Mixon went.
Okay.
And then 2-1 went, let's see here, Deshaun Watson. And then Russell Wilson. And then Nick Chubb.
Okay.
Aaron Jones, and here we are. George Kittle just went.
Yep, Aaron. Now the Aaron Jones. I know that some people in my league, actually everybody in my 3 leagues here in Central and Upstate New York, at the Wildcat Sports Pub. They chose when we were on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. They made the decision to choose Aaron Jones early. I believe A.J. Dillon's eventually going to get that job, and I think he will at the very least split some time with him. Are you high on Aaron Jones? I mean, you know what, that I'm typically not, but with A.J. Dillon being drafted in the second round as a higher draft pick, what are your thoughts on Aaron Jones being drafted in fantasy so high?
Yeah, I sort of got to hold my nose if he's in my area where, when I'm getting ready to pick. I'm on deck. I'm on the clock here. Give me just 1 second here to make sure I get my pick in here, and I'll finish that thought if you would.
No, absolutely. As you're doing that, Mike, here. Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I'm on the 10th pick here. I picked up Lamar Jackson on the first pick. I'm going to do something nasty here. Watch this. He just took Kyler Murray in front of me. I was going to do that. I was going to double quarterback it right away. But, I'm going to go with the guy who I think should have went in the first round in this league if we were drafting under normal format, if there wasn't a super flex, I would think this would be my guy. But he went too. I missed that one. I was talking about Miles Sanders. I don't know. Here I'm either looking at, let me double check, make sure Julio is available, who I think is a pretty good pick.
Okay.
It's a PPR league. He gets big touchdowns. But then I'm going 0 running back to start with, and there is Austin Eckler still on the board here. I think I get better value with Julio here, so I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to go ahead and go with Julio Jones here.
I agree with that.
The 10th pick.
Yeah. Yeah, so Mike going here with Julio Jones, George Kittle, second tight end taken off the board, taken as Mike and I projected, Travis Kelce being the first off, George Kittle the second. Josh Jacobs, a nice value there in the second round. Miles Sanders as well. In one of my leagues, I actually pulled off Miles Sanders and Saquon, and so I got the Penn State gentlemen to reunite with each other, and Saquon, obviously being the starter in front of Miles, and then Miles taking over. I was able to get them. Kyler Murray taken off the board. Chris Godwin right before you, Mike. I would imagine if, put it to you like this, if Chris Godwin wasn't taken right before you, would you have gone with Julio or would you have gone with Chris Godwin?
No, I have Julio ranked slightly higher than Chris Godwin by about a point to a point and a half a week. What I do is I do projections on how I feel the player is going to do for the year. I do them for most all the top players, and then what I do is I put those in order based on the scoring system. So this is a PPR with combo yardage. In other words, you're getting bonus yards for touchdowns over 40 yards. So those extra 3-4 points per touchdown over 40 yards can come in handy. So, it's just a little extra. It's a little bonus. So you get those guys who can make big-time plays like Amari Cooper who just went, like Mike Evans who just went. Those are the guys you want because it could come down to a point or two a week, and that's the difference right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think obviously getting Julio Jones at that point was good value for you to pull off something like that. I love the Chris Godwin pick there as well. A lot of people are high on Amari Cooper. Mike Evans kind of going how I thought. He's right there with Chris Godwin in our rankings. They're back-to-back to each other with Chris slightly edging out Mike Evans in both of our rankings. But still, I think in the drafts we've been seeing them have a little bit of distance between each other. In this one, there was a couple picks in between them. And then Austin Eckler going right after that. Are you sold on Austin Eckler this season, or should people be on the lookout for Justin Jackson with the Chargers?
Yeah, I like Austin Eckler a lot. I always have. I think he's got a lot of moxie. I think he's always had something to prove, and he seems to always prove it. So I always give him the benefit of the doubt, especially in a league like this. Has an excellent pick there at the bottom. It's a 13th pick in the second round of a 16-team Dynasty league. You get Austin Eckler. You can't complain about that. 4 picks ago, I was considering taking him there. And there goes one of the first rookie running backs off the board right there, Jonathan Taylor, going to the 15th pick in the second round. And again, I think that's hidden value there. I think Marlon Mack is going to start the year, but I think as Jonathan Taylor gets acclimated, because don't forget, these rookies are at a disadvantage. They got to learn new pass blocking schemes for the NFL. if you can't pass block, a lot of times as a rookie running back, you're not on the field. But a guy with the talent of a Jonathan Taylor can, I think you could just give him the ball and, just put him in on running plays. But then what happens? Then teams load the box on you. So, you got to be honest. You got to keep the defense honest and be able to have guys that can play with 8 men in the box or, act like they're going to run and then go out for a pass or break out to the side for a screen. So I think that's a great pick. There goes Todd Gurley, too.
Yeah, and I mean, what are your thoughts on Todd Gurley this season? We know he's an Atlanta Falcon. Very different here. The Atlanta Falcons just a couple seasons ago had Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, and then Kyle Shanahan went on from being the offensive coordinator in Atlanta to becoming the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Shortly after Tevin Coleman headed that way, Devontae had issues with injury, which Tevin usually filled in that time pretty nicely. And now we're seeing Todd Gurley with Ito Smith. And so in just a couple seasons, the 1-2 punch has changed. And to be completely honest, Ito hasn't really shown what he can be. And Todd Gurley's in his first season in Atlanta, so there's a lot of question marks in that backfield right now.
Well, the name to look out for that not a lot of people are, I think if something does happen to Todd Gurley, heaven forbid, I'm not wishing harm on everybody, but I think you're going to look at a guy named Brian Hill. Brian Hill's been a guy that's been on my radar for quite a few years, never seemed to have the opportunity until late last year when he and Quadri Allison were able to split carries. With the first pick here in the third round on the far right of the screen that, we're not going to be able to see right now, Kenyon Drake just went with the first pick in the third round, which again, I think Kenyon Drake is due for a big year. I have his average draft position as the first pick in the second round. So that kind of shows you there's a little bit of value, but don't forget, I'm looking at 4 or 5 quarterbacks, or 5 quarterbacks already off the board. So you really got to have a game plan going in, but you got to be flexible with your game plan as well and be able to take what the draft gives you. There goes David Johnson.
Yeah, and David Johnson, I mean, this is another question mark we're looking at in this year's draft of what he's going to be in Houston and how this is really going to shake out. What's your take on David Johnson in Houston? I mean, Houston struggled with running backs. Lamar Miller was probably the best one to write home about in the last few seasons. Your take on David Johnson and what seems to be a very lopsided draft with DeAndre Hopkins, arguably the best wide receiver in the country at the time, going to the Arizona Cardinals for David Johnson and a little bit else. What's your analysis and your take on David Johnson? I know we've talked about the trade itself, but the fantasy value of David Johnson, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm sort of up in the air. I think, his ship may have sailed. He's going in average draft position of the third pick in the third round on average. So that's about right where he would normally get picked. But again, 16-team league, but then you add the fact that 5 quarterbacks are gone way early in this. Normally it'd be 1 or 2 at this point, probably 2 at this point under normal scoring system. But the other thing to remember is, and this is what surprises me, I think there's a lot of value in getting some younger running backs, some rookie running backs in the dynasty situation more times than not. As you saw, I wasn't scared. I'm one of the I'm one of 2 guys in this league here so far that have no running back, and I'm not worried about that at all. A lot of times people start to panic because, oh my gosh, I should have taken a running back, and then they force themselves to take a guy that may be the 5th tier running back. I like to group my guys in tiers, for instance, and I'm saying Tiers, not tears like I'm crying over here, but tiers, whereas 4 or 5 guys are all on the same level. What that means is I'm not scared that I don't have a running back because I have 5, 6 more in the 4th or 5th tier here that I'm ready to come back and jump on here if I need to. But again, I'm going to take what the draft gives me. So you got to have a plan, but you can't be so rigid that you can't adjust. It's just like playing football, the game. You got to have a plan going in, but be prepared to call an audible.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's important and vital for people to be able to call an audible. In one of the drafts that we had over this past weekend that Mike and I will be discussing on the show, I had a guy who had the first overall pick, and in our snake draft, after he took Christian McCaffrey and it swung back to him, he took a double tight end. He took Travis Kelce and George Kittle back-to-back. I've never seen anything like that happen before. He does get, arguably the number 1 and number 2 tight ends in the nation. But what are your thoughts on that, Mike, to go number 1 and number 2 at tight end? I mean, in our league, you can play both every single week that, they're not on a bye week. What are your thoughts on taking Travis Kelce and George Kittle back-to-back? I've never seen a double tight end like that.
Well, the only time that would happen is if there was a tight end premium. That's a popular trend right now where it's a PPR league for everybody else. So let's say everybody gets 1 point per reception in your league, 1 point PPR. Well, the tight ends may get 1.5 points per reception. Okay. So in that case, that may make sense in the flex. But see, a lot of times people don't understand. I'm not looking at just the players. I'm looking at the differences between my players and the other players. That's why I rank things in tiers. I project ahead of time what I think they're going to do, and then I actually take them and write them down in a sheet. I have them typed out on a sheet, on a cheat sheet that I'm going to have in front of me, and then I'll draw lines. It's like, well, these numbers are close together, and these numbers are close together, putting them in groups. So right now, for instance, DK Metcalf just went, okay? And DK Metcalf, his group here, let me pull him up on my sheet here. And here. I have him ranked number 22 on wide receivers, and I'm on the clock here, so just give me 1 second here. J.K. Dobbins just went, and as you saw, I just mentioned that before, that I don't mind relying on some rookie running backs, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I think I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at a rookie running back, and I'm going to look at Cam Akers. Yeah. I think Cam Akers is going to have a strong year, and even though he's not the highest-ranked guy I have right now, from where I'm at, and I'm taking what the draft has given me, I think Cam Akers has a great opportunity to be the starter in Los Angeles for the Rams.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those in the third round that are wondering, a couple of picks on the back end here, Kenyon Drake and David Johnson, as we talked about, went Adam Thielen, Cooper Kupp, and then we saw Chris Carson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kenny Golladay, DK Metcalf, J.K. Dobbins, rookie running back for the Baltimore Ravens, and now Mike took Cam Akers, a rookie running back for the Rams, could start right away and have an immediate impact. Darrell Henderson from Memphis, I thought would do more, and I don't know if necessarily maybe they've schemed for him the best. I don't know what it is at this point, but I would like to think that Darrell Henderson has an opportunity, but Cam Akers definitely comes in with Todd Gurley being gone with the opportunity to be the starter outright because Darrell Henderson is not the incumbent. James Conner, this is a little bit later for him, and Odell Beckham Jr. Mike, I think what we're seeing, and this is a 16-team league, I think what we're seeing as we take a live look in at this draft as it happens, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent out there. And, and the other thing that I'm realizing, there's a lot of draft, like good quality draftable rookie running backs that include J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor. There's a lot of value to me. And I think in one of my leagues, I drafted a bunch of them. And so not on purpose did I go for rookies. I went for talent, and it just so happened to be that way to pull in some of these guys. But I think, DeAndre's got an opportunity in Detroit to be the starter. Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack's done some good things, but he's not consistently getting every carry, and he hasn't been consistently been the 100% guy every week. J.K. Dobbins is in an offense in Baltimore where they're going to run the ball a lot. And, and Cam Akers is in a fantastic situation, like I mentioned. So, this may be the year of the rookie running back because there's a good amount of them that are ranked pretty high that have an opportunity to start right away.
Yeah, and what I did was I was prepared to take another quarterback on the way back here because you have that quarterback premium here. There's 16 teams in a Dynasty startup with the super flex, and I'm all prepared. But let me tell you why I didn't. Nobody else is doing it anymore. The quarterbacks have cooled off. The first 6 quarterbacks are off the board. That's my first 2 tiers of quarterbacks. Now I've got 2, 4, 6. I've got 8 guys to choose from. And as I say that, Carson Wentz goes off the board with the 16th pick in the third, followed by Allen Robinson. So, again, I was willing to adjust. Now, if another quarterback or 2 goes before me on the 7th pick here, I may have to consider going quarterback again here because, again, I want to get one of these guys in this next tier. And, again, I got 7 or 8 of them all together in one tier. Now, there's an interesting pick. There goes David Montgomery. Unfortunately, that's not a great pick in my opinion here because he's hurt. He's out 2 to 4 weeks with a leg injury, a groin injury. You know, that's great news for a guy like a Ryan Nall and a Tariq Cohen. Yeah. And as I say it, there goes Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, these drafts have this draft that we're taking a look at right now. It's interesting how things shake out. Like you said, you know, there are these opportunities that people are taking on some of these players that may be injured, maybe in contract disputes. I think what was interesting to me is Alvin Kamara being drafted still relatively in the same spot. Maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire taking a place of him with some concern over him being at camp and finding an agreement with the New Orleans Saints. But not too much worry or concern over Alvin Kamara, which I find to be interesting here. And you know, and then the other guy that's people have kind of warned about due to contract disputes was Joe Mixon, and he went a few picks later at the end of the first round at pick 16, which is a little bit off your screen here for those of you that are watching. So, you know, I don't think too many people are concerned that Kamara and Mixon are going to figure things out with their teams.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Bear with me. I'm on the clock here, so I'm just double-checking a few things here.
But I will make a note here while Mike is checking that the tight ends went as we described in as far as order, not necessarily at their draft pick, but in order. Travis Kelce first, George Kittle second, Mark Andrews third, and Zach Ertz fourth is the exact ranker that Mike and I have. If you go to wakeupcalldt.com and click on the fantasy football tab, you will see Mike's rankings and my rankings side by side, where we agree on some and not on all, and give our projected thoughts on, you know, the rankings of best available quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. And we had Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, and Zach Ertz in the order that they were chosen. Mike, you went with Le'Veon Bell. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, that's the first draft I've taken Le'Veon Bell in this year, and I've had quite a few drafts under my belt so far. It's just a tremendous opportunity. He's come in a lot leaner. He's come in a lot meaner, even though there was some disagreement or supposed disagreement between Gase and himself as far as, you know, usage, and there still may be that ruffle, and they brought in LaMichael Perrine. I just feel that he's going to, you know, they make diamonds when you put coal under pressure, in a sense. So under pressure sometimes is a good thing. That's how some people perform at their best, and I think Le'Veon Bell is going to rise to the occasion here, and I really feel good. I considered quarterback. The guy after me went with Josh Allen. I considered quarterback there, but again, there wasn't another quarterback taken. So I still have one of the top 2 quarterbacks. So I'm trying to get the top player in each position. See, I established what I consider a Mendoza line or a median of where these players are going to be in. And it's just trying to get the ones that are going to be above the median in each position. If you do it like that and establish tiers for the break in the difference in points, like I'll establish a tier based on a point differential of 1.25 to 1.5 points a week. So that basically tells you in a 16-team league, I'm looking at about 16 to 24-point difference in a week. That's where I break that tier. So I know that if I have 7 guys to choose from that are fourth-tier quarterbacks, and there's only 5 or 6 off the board, I can still wait. These guys aren't grasping at quarterbacks, and that's okay because I'm going to go back and pick up more rookies and more guys that I think are going to be rising stars in those other positions, such as running back and wide receiver, and I'm not sweating at all. This draft's going swimmingly well, in my opinion.
Yeah, you know, and with, you know, 16 teams, you know, this can be kind of nerve-wracking for some people out there. What is a strategy in a 16-team league, you know, for you, Mike? I mean, you got to get pretty deep in this thing. You know, we're seeing the usual suspects right now, but eventually this is going to get to a point where, you know, people are gonna have to dig deep. And we're seeing here round 4, Allen Robinson the second, David Montgomery, Mark Andrews, Calvin Ridley, Zach Ertz, Keenan Allen. You took Le'Veon Bell. Josh Allen right after that. A lot of people high on the Buffalo quarterback, which I am too. Terry McLaurin, Robert Woods, DJ Chark III, and Tyler Lockett. I want to circle the one. I want to circle DJ Chark Jr. What are your thoughts on DJ Chark? And I mean, he's going in the 4th round. I don't think this is a bad time to pick him at all. There's obviously value there, but he was chosen ahead of Tom Brady, ahead of Tyler Lockett, and other guys on the board. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think DJ Chark is an excellent pick. He's going an average, according to my math here, of the 4th round, 14th pick. And I think there's still value there simply because I think Jacksonville is going to surprise some people. I think they're going to air it out. They're going to either really be really good or really bad on defense. They got a young defense. And that seems to be like how the Bucs went last year. Yeah, Jameis put up 30 interceptions, but he put up 30-some-odd touchdowns, and he did that because they were behind or losing, and a lot was on garbage time. So that may pan out to their benefit. But I think with the addition of Jay Gruden, the guy that put that Cincinnati air game on display there, I think a guy like Jay Gruden is licking his chops with a LaVisca Chenault. You got a Chris Conley still, but you got a DJ Chark. Now you got a Tyler Eifert in the mix. I think there's a lot of pass-catching opportunities, especially now that they traded away Leonard Fournette and look like right now they're going to go to a running back by committee. But you know what? Maybe this is a landing spot for Devonta Freeman. So be on the waiver wire lookout immediately in your league for Devonta Freeman, who's probably out there if he does sign with Jacksonville.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought here. I had brought up the fact that Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman were a nice 1-2 punch in fantasy. Sometimes frustrating not knowing who was going to get it that day if they were both healthy. Typically, Tevin Coleman got his hay in fantasy when Devonta Freeman was out due to injury, and then when he came back, sometimes it went back and forth, but you lean more on Devonta Freeman. To see the fact that he is. I mean, you look at his name; he is a free man, truly, right now, and has an opportunity to go anywhere. So the question is where he's going to go. Could be an interesting landing spot for him to be in Jacksonville. And yeah, as Mike said, to be the first to the free agency and to always be scouring and paying attention, knowing that if you're not consistently looking at different things that are happening and changes that are happening, you're gonna miss out on some stuff, and you may get passed by. So I think it's a very important and vital for people to be paying a lot of attention to what's going on right now as we look to figure out some of these things, such as where we will find Devonta Freeman again. Could be a great landing spot for him. I told you last season, don't be surprised with the issues that they've had with Leonard Fournette and the fact that he's gotten injured at times and whatnot. I said don't be surprised if Raquel Armstead, who I think was going to get some touches as a rookie, and he did last year, I said don't be surprised if he eventually takes over the job. And now technically the job is his to take over. So, Chris Thompson will be utilized, but he's not an every down back. Mike, I didn't think it was going to happen like this, but I most certainly did think that there could be a loss of, there could be a divorce between Leonard Fournette and the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that we could see the emergence of an opportunity for Raquel Armstead, and we're seeing exactly that, a little bit ahead of schedule for me, but also something that I predicted was going to happen. Are you surprised at all?
No, I'm not. I'm really not. We talked about this for years when, he's cutting up on the sideline after he gets in a fight in a game. You're supposed to be a team leader. You're a first-round draft pick from 3 years ago. You're supposed to be the guy the young guys are looking up to because you're closer to their age. They can identify with you. You're supposed to be a leader on the team, on and off the field. He was more of a system guy, as it turned out. I did like his growth as a receiver last year. I thought that was quite poignant. And as we talk about it, just 4 picks ago, Leonard Fournette got picked. So there's either a guy that thinks he knows something or there's a guy that's just ill-prepared for the draft. Now, what I want to point out is, I don't know these guys in this league. I stumbled across this here recently, and they seem to be a a bunch of guys that have their act together. So I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. But then you see a pick like that, you question the situation. But that's okay. There's 16 teams, and I think a lot of these guys are good. It looks like it's going to be a fun dynasty league, and maybe next year we'll follow up with this same league. And when we do the rookie draft only next year, that might be something interesting for some people to see if they've never seen a rookie only draft.
Yeah, and something I found interesting here, in one of my leagues I drafted Tom Brady and later on drafted my backup quarterback Joe Burrow, and now we've seen Tom Brady be the second to last quarterback off the board, and right after that, Joe Burrow. Thoughts on this? Thoughts on the fact that Brady went late in the 4th round and Joe Burrow was the first quarterback to go after him?
You know, it's to each his own. Again, I got Joe Burrow listed a whole tier below Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So there's still 3 names on my list in that tier before there. But, you know, it's to each his own, especially in a league like this. And I do want to make mention, a couple picks ago, Hayden Hurst went off the board, and that's one of my shining stars. I had him going an average of round 7. But I think if you look at the guy who had the most targets last year at tight end, it was Austin Hooper. So that system is still there in Atlanta. Hayden Hurst went under the shadows of Mark Andrews for the first couple of years, also went through 2 different offensive coordinators and had some injuries. So I think Hayden Hurst is due to have a big year. He's one of my dark horse guys to surprise people this year. And I don't know. Some people probably aren't going to see him coming because they're like, yeah, who's that guy? I haven't heard of him, and he's in Atlanta. He hasn't done anything. You know what I mean? I've been on top of this guy for a couple of years, so I'm real excited for the year he's gonna have.
Yeah, I find it very interesting too. To know that something that kind of stuck out to me a couple of years ago when the Baltimore Ravens drafted Hayden Hurst, and then they went and drafted Mark Andrews. Kind of like, hey, let's see which one works out, or maybe we lucked out with both, and it ended up being that Mark Andrews was the one that worked out better. And Mark Andrews went from a rookie potential sleeper or somebody that nobody's thinking of to a guy that maybe you could put in the top 15 to now a guy that Mike and I put on our top 3 when it comes to tight ends.
Well, see, it was smart on Baltimore's part because I've talked about this theory and this concept in fantasy football as well as NFL football, where when you go to the well, don't just get a sip of water and leave. Grab one to take with you on the way back. So that's kind of like what that is. The Baltimore Ravens smartly backed up their plan. They picked Hayden Hurst in the 1st round a couple years ago, and they got Mark Andrews in the 4th round of the same draft. And you say, well, why take 2 tight ends? Well, you see what happened. Stuff happens. Guys don't work out. People get hurt. Schemes change. People lose jobs. There's all sorts of stuff that can happen. And they run multiple tight ends as it is. So in Baltimore, that's a great situation for them. And as you see, Hayden Hurst had the opportunity to leave and get paid somewhere else. Now, I'm on the clock here, so bear with me. You see a couple more quarterbacks, 3 more quarterbacks or so, 4 more quarterbacks went after I last spoke with you. This is a quarterback-heavy league, but I still feel good about my ability to possibly get one on the way back. Although if you look at the board, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 teams behind me that are going to get essentially 2 picks each. So there's going to be 8 picks. So I still feel okay. I have 3 in the tier that I'm in right now. I may take a tight end here because it seems that the tight ends are going to be a premium here, although the 2 of the teams behind me already have their tight end. And I may look at a Hunter Henry here as I think the direction I'm going to go. I like that pick a lot here, and I think that I'm going with the best value if I can, although he's going an average of the 16th pick in the 5th round. I'm taking him about 6 picks early, but guess what? He's probably not going to be there on the way back. So I'm going to maybe look at a quarterback on the way back, but for sure, I'm glad I got Hunter Henry there.
Yeah, and in making a pick like this, like you said, looking at the tight ends, kind of where they're at, that's one of those positions that if the league starts drafting early, Mike and I spoke about, ad-libbing. Mike, you brought it up, your ability to have a draft strategy, but to also be able to learn on the fly and shake it up a little bit. And tight ends is one of those things you can't afford to let go out of your sight because Mike and I have a tier of good tight ends. And then there's a tier, below it there that's got some pretty good guys. And then, it starts to drop off and get a little bit interesting. You could check out our rankings on tight ends and so much more by going to wakeupcalldt.com and clicking on the fantasy football tab to get our rankings for this season's fantasy in quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight ends. Looking at this right now, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Zach Ertz gone, then Hayden Hurst and Darren Waller. So you getting Hunter Henry at that time, I would say, is very important. Unless you felt really, really confident that you can get him on the back end in round number 6, I would say, coming back around to you, I should say, then, this is a good time to get a tight end because of where we're getting to. Hunter Henry could potentially be a top 3, top 4 guy, but he's a big if he stays healthy. Darren Waller is somebody that I think maybe could have been taken a little bit earlier, maybe before Hayden Hurst, in my opinion. And then, the top 4 guys were taken. So I think at this point, Mike, you do have to ad-lib and realize the facts that whatever strategy you had at that time, you needed to take a tight end because of the smaller pool that you have to choose from, especially when we look at the tiers like you had talked about before.
Yeah, I think an interesting pick just went, Justin Jefferson. I like him a lot. Minnesota's a tough opportunity for him. It's a great opportunity, but it's a tough opportunity. And let me explain what I mean. He's going to have to face the number 2, sometimes the number 1 corner on the other team. You got Adam Thielen. He's taking the place of Stephon Diggs. So those are big shoes to fill. But remember, this is a dynasty league. Some guys are willing to take good guys, and this team's also got the same guy that drafted Justin Jefferson right now. Already has Mike Evans and Odell Beckham. So he's fine for now, and he's finding value in the PPR league and getting those receivers. He must feel like I do, that there's a lot of depth at both running back and receiver. But, in a dynasty league, everybody says, oh, you got to build for the future, take all the young guys. No, I got to have the Jerry Jones type approach. I'm going to build for the future, but I got to get butts in seats now. I got to have teams rooting. I got to win games now. I can't wait. So I got to win now, and guess what? I also got to build for the future at the same time. So it's interesting to see the different approaches here.
Yeah, and like you said, building for the future and thinking about, what is it going to look like down the road. But, I went high on wide receivers in one of my, in all my leagues, I obviously had a focus on it since we added the PPR into it. I had the standard and the PPR, and I merged them together and had added in point totals of different things over time. And so essentially I brought the best of both worlds together where we could really score a lot of points. So in the first draft, in my morning draft that I had, and the first one I've done this season, I went really heavy on wide receiver because I felt like the talent was there and I didn't want to pass on it. So I took them, and before I knew it, I had 4 out of the 6 max we were allowed to have. In this draft right now, Aaron Rodgers going after Matt Stafford, after Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, and Pat Mahomes, and then Baker Mayfield and Matt Ryan. Thoughts on the last 3 quarterbacks chosen?
Yeah, as you see, I kind of guessed wrong. I said before, taking Hunter Henry there was the play. But as you see, I missed out on an opportunity with Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan. But as far as I'm concerned, that's okay because I got Lamar Jackson. So I'm going to probably come back. And, we've got a few guys that are in the draft right now that have tuned in. I posted the link there. They were asking for the link. So a couple guys may be popping in and out to see what's going on. So I'm not going to give away my total strategy. But I'm going to look at that situation a little closer here in a few minutes. I don't know if I'm going to let another one get past me. I have 2 left in my second or third tier of quarterbacks here, and I have some big names here. I'm not going to name drop until I'm on the clock here, but I may be looking at that situation I just talked about. But if I'm looking at my draft cheat sheet that I have in front of me, and you can get a free draft cheat sheet by going on my website, and you type in the promo code free. Geez, I don't have it.
No, it's okay. No, you're okay. Score free 5. You go to HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com like my leagues did, and you type in score free 5. all in caps, score free as one word, and the number 5 all together at checkout. And so you go into HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com, you click on Dominate Your Draft, then you choose Standard League or PPR, and then once you've chosen that, in the checkout, it'll say $5. You type in score free 5 into the promo code section, and it'll say $0, and it'll be sent to your email.
All right, so I guess totally wrong, okay, because 3 quarterbacks went on the way back, and then 4 more went. I'm on the clock right now. 4 more went, and 2 of them are the teams that just took them. So they took them boom, boom, back to back, boom, boom, back to back. So now that whole tier that I had lined up is gone. Those guys are all gone now. So now I'm into my next tier. There's 3 of those guys are gone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now I got 8 guys behind me in the draft. No, 9 guys behind me. I got 8 guys in that tier. So they're going to take 18 picks. I'm going to gamble again on the quarterback situation here, and I'm going to look at another position if I can. And don't tell me this guy's available. Please don't tell me. Let me see here. Uh-oh. Hang on a second here.
And as Mike is...
I'm thinking T.Y. Hilton here.
Okay, all right.
I'm surprised he's still on the board, and I needed a receiver, and I'm going to chance it again on the quarterback. I'm going to roll the dice twice here. I lost the first time, big time, but you got to take chances. You got to be prepared to take chances in your drafts.
Yeah, Mike, you're making a lot of sense here. You do have to take chance in your draft and kind of see what you got going on. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense, but you got to be smart in what you're doing. And like you said, you're rolling the dice. You're in a league that has 16 teams, so anything can happen. Ryan Tannehill, interesting. Obviously, this is a 16-team draft, so the anticipation of seeing him go is a lot higher than in the draft. So we had a smaller number as far as league by league. We didn't have Ryan Tannehill drafted at all. But Cam Newton going, he was left off of a bunch of my drafts. We didn't see him get drafted. Are you surprised at that?
There's a lot of people that aren't sold on Cam with his surgically repaired shoulder, with his surgically repaired foot. Is he the same fleet of foot guy? That's half his game. Half his game is the threat that if he doesn't see the box loaded up, he's going to call his own number and run the ball. And let's not forget his goal line approach. Cam loves him Cam. We talked about this years and years and years and years. Cam loves him some Cam, and he's not afraid to call his own number down there at the goal line or in the red zone. So, I don't know. I don't know how he feels about the receivers there. He no longer has a Gronk-type guy in New England. I don't know. Maybe Devin Asiasi can be that guy, but who's going to take a chance on him at this point? That's a late-round guy that you're looking at here. As we say that, a couple more quarterbacks just went, as well as A.J. Green, Jalen Reagor. I'm talking about Drew Lock just went, who I think is going to have a fantastic year as well.
Yeah, and Drew Lock, another one of those guys that some people might have a big question mark next to, but Drew Lock has Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. And here's the thing, when people are high on guys like that, if you're high on Jerry Jeudy as a rookie wide receiver and you're high on Cortland Sutton, who you should be in my opinion, covered him in SMU, and Hands has got a lot to offer, I think that's, if you're high on them, then you got to be high on their quarterback, because if you believe that they're going to score fantasy points, that means you believe that they're going to have a quarterback that can get the ball out to them. Cortland Sutton, there's been belief in him. I've been able to steal him away in a couple of my drafts, and he went in this draft at the early part of the early part of the third round. He went. And so a huge pick there. In my opinion, Jerry Jeudy is still on the board, but we have seen Cortland Sutton go, and then Drew Lock just go here recently. Jalen Reagor, interesting here. This is a guy that could emerge in Philadelphia as the top guy, because there really is no top guy. On the depth chart right now, Deshaun Jackson, who found his way back to Philadelphia via going through Tampa and Washington, is now a Philadelphia Eagle again. He had some good moments last year, and then he got hurt. So this is kind of an interesting, and he just went here. He went at the top of the 7th round, Deshaun Jackson. What are your thoughts on Jalen Reagor going before Deshaun Jackson?
Well, the guy just made a comment in the room that it auto-drafted for him. He must have been timed out and didn't know it, or auto-stall, or his auto-draft button is accidentally on. I can see it right there. So he's having internet issues, which is, a shame if that's a guy you're not high on. And right now, Jalen Rager's dinged up, so I can understand that he didn't want him there. I totally get it. I wouldn't have wanted him there either. But, again, it's a Dynasty league, and the same guy has DeAndre Hopkins, Adam Thielen, Jarvis Landry, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Rager, and now Jerry Jeudy, which he probably wanted to take Jeudy on the last pick. But still, even if you discount that last pick, he's got 5 wide receivers before that. He's got 6 wide receivers. He's got 1 running back, no quarterbacks in a quarterback demand league. So he might find out the hard way here that he should have taken a quarterback with one of those picks, because by my count right now, 22 quarterbacks have gone. 20 quarterbacks have gone. There's only 12 left. He's going to need at least 2. I'd prefer to have 3, actually. But again, I'm still looking at value over the median. I'm still looking at, it's okay. Maybe I can take the 21st best quarterback, but maybe I can get the 28th best wide receiver, and I need 3 wide receivers. Well, I still might rather have that quarterback, because it's a 2-quarterback league. You have to have at least 2. So do the math with me real quick. There's 16 teams. There's 32 NFL teams. If everybody gets 2 quarterbacks, then everybody's going to be fine. I guarantee you not everybody's going to get 2 quarterbacks. I guarantee you there's a guy like me who may end up with 3 quarterbacks. So 33% of the quarterbacks go down to injury each year in this league. So you need to be ready for that, to make that adjustment. Yeah. But at the same time, you got to stack the deck against everybody else, and you got to make everybody else wonder why and how and chase you. So I'm looking at this. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting 6 teams, unless I'm wrong, with 2 quarterbacks already. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3 teams, 4 teams with no quarterback at all. And there goes Marvin Jones, Will Fuller, and Ronald Jones right off the board. And I'm coming up on deck here, Dan.
Yeah, so, I mean, as you get ready to come up here on deck, I'll take a look at some of these thoughts here. There's been a giant run on wide receivers very quick. And as Mike said, the guy who picks 16th, his draft, he timed out, and it auto-drafted him. Brandon Cooks, who is supposed to be one of the top guys in Houston, even though he's new there. I think it's Will Fuller, the 5th job to lose, but Will Fuller's got to stay healthy, God willing. Will Fuller just went recently, but the guy that took 16 when the time ran out got Brandon Cooks and Deshaun Jackson. He didn't have any wide receivers up to that point, and those are not 2 I would have taken. He went heavy on running backs. He went Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, and Leonard Fournette. Maybe he had some issues before then too, as Leonard Fournette doesn't even have a team right now. He did get Deshaun Watson, so I think the Joe Mixon, Deshaun Watsons were probably his in that moment, and maybe Kenyon Drake. But the Leonard Fournette pick, questionable, and then the Brandon Cooks and Deshaun Jackson as time ran out. Christian Kirk went after that. Jerry Jeudy, good to see him go. He went very shortly after Drew Lock. And then Jared Cook, another tight end off the board. Marvin Jones Jr., Will Fuller the 5th. And then we saw Ronald Jones the 2nd, who I'm not sold on, but he has Brady now, and maybe he'll find his way with Bruce Arians and the crew there in Tampa. But I have been very underwhelmed by Ronald Jones. And then we have Sony Michel, who went after that. People forget Sony Michel is the starter in New England. He is your starting running back, and having a new quarterback there. Either way, whether you trust in Stidham, who wasn't your starter, or you go to Cam Newton outright, Sony Michel could be a guy that they lean on. Evan Engram, he went here in the 7th round. I'm not surprised. I think some people still forget about him. And you just picked up Jimmy Garoppolo, who is my Mr. Irrelevant in our league that had 8 players in it, 8 people drafting. Jimmy Garoppolo went last. What are your thoughts on getting Jimmy G here in round number 7 as your backup quarterback?
Well, I was looking at him and another player to be named later. I'm going to tell you later who that was. I was hemming and hawing. I was bouncing back and forth, and I accidentally hit the draft button for Jimmy Garoppolo. And I'm okay with that. I'm not freaking out. I'm not pulling a hair out of my head, because I was considering him. There was another player to be named later. I'll talk to you about that when I see him selected, whether it's by me or not. I was going to chance it again with the quarterback because out of the 6 teams behind me, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 6 teams already have 2 quarterbacks. So the likelihood I'm taking a third quarterback is small, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks available in my next tier. So that could change your draft strategy. So you want to see where you're at on the draft board at times, but you also want to make sure that in a situation like this, what are other guys thinking? See, I don't know these guys as well as I've known some other people I've drafted with, and it's almost like playing poker. Sometimes it benefits you to learn the room, and as I say that, a guy took a third quarterback, and he took Ben Roethlisberger. So this guy gets what I'm getting. This guy's doing what I'm doing. This guy's got a balanced roster, and he's just picked up his third quarterback, and that's a pretty smart move, in my opinion, in this type of league.
Yeah, he's picking up what you're putting down, Mr. Sofka, as we take a look at this once again. After you took Jimmy G, Ben Roethlisberger, like you said, going to the team that has Pat Mahomes, Drew Brees, and Ben Roethlisberger. Very smart here, and the separation here was good too, to take Pat Mahomes and then got Austin Eckler, a guy that I really like in Cortland Sutton. Kelvin Ridley, 4th-round value, was terrific. Devin Singletary, he's going to split time with Zach Moss. I think both of them are going to get ample time in Buffalo. I think they're going to be, I think that fantasy value for both of them is good. Singletary being a second-year player, and then Zach Moss being a rookie coming in, who I think had the last 3 seasons in college with over 1,000 yards rushing in each of those seasons. And then we see Drew Brees and Big Ben. I really like that team so far, and I love the fact that he went Pat Mahomes, 4 picks in between, still got Drew Brees, and then came back around with Ben Roethlisberger. And after that, Mike, we saw Deontay Johnson. And it's funny how Drew Lock was taken, and then somebody was like, oh, Jerry Jeudy. And then Ben Roethlisberger was taken, and the next pick was like, oh, Deontay Johnson. Somebody's going to have to, Ben's got other guys to throw to besides Juju. So it's almost like some of these picks are setting like little reminders, or, are kind of giving a little shock to the next pick, or somebody a couple picks after, that once some of these people start getting taken off the board, they start thinking, who are they throwing to, who are they catching from? And then after that happened with Ben Roethlisberger and Deontay Johnson, we saw our first defense taken at the end of the 7th round with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting pick there. I'm not a fan of taking a defense very high in a league. And you think on a league like this, again, you do the math, 16 teams, 32 defenses, because you're going to need one for a bye week or so. We only start 1 defense in this league. They did put a rule in place shortly before draft time, which is another reason why you always want to be plugged in early and communicating, especially online in leagues. Make sure you know the settings, the scoring. Make sure you know all those things, because they made a limit of 2 defenses per team, meaning even if I pick my defensive last, guess what? I'm still going to get 2 defenses. You see what I mean? So that's a good thing to do. A lot of times there's a popular thing, which I like to do often, is streaming a defense. If you're in a 12-team league, maybe you stream your defense, so you pick them last. You go and find out who's going to play against the team that you don't think is going to do as well, and you look at streaming those defenses every week. You might be changing your defense, and if you have any questions about that, you can always hit me up. You can always hit me up on the website at HallOfFameFantasyFootball.com, or you can always send me an email at Mike@HallOfFameFantasySports.
Yeah, and like Mike said, streamlining a defense, that's something that I've done as well. And over these last couple seasons, kind of taking a look at things and said, you know what, if I'm not truly sold on it, but it depends on what defense you get. Because if you get one that you really want, then you're not going to let them go, and you're going to have to pick up another one, which means you're going to have to put somebody else out there. So you have to almost hope that somebody on your team doesn't turn out the way that you were hoping for, and you can let them go, and at least temporarily, but you may not be able to get them back. So it's important to be smart in that. Robbie Anderson went at the top of the 8th round. I'm a fan of Robbie Anderson. I think he's going to look great in a Carolina jersey. I think he should take number 1 that Cam Newton was wearing. It just seems to fit Robbie. And because I feel like he could potentially do a lot. I know DJ Moore is there, but I think Robbie Anderson was one of the only bright lights in, on the Jets team. Him and Quincy Enunwa, both of them are gone. I think Robbie Anderson, being young in the game in the NFL as far as, his NFL career, and at the same time, coming from the Jets and their, kind of very, very strangely put together a team that starts at the head with head coach Adam Gase after he didn't work out in Miami. The Jets spent about 2 seconds going and running and getting him, which is very confusing of a selection to me. I think Robbie's going to benefit from being in Carolina. I think Carolina's going to benefit from him. What do you think about his fantasy value?
I'm kind of all over the board here with that. I know I'm on deck here, so bear with me. I'm a little scattered. I'm looking at, and I'm on the clock here, so we'll come back to that. We'll circle back to that. Let me go ahead and get on the clock here.
Yeah, so do your thing, and as you're doing that, I'll talk about the fact that two players that were connected to the Minnesota Vikings were taken back-to-back. Kirk Cousins, the current quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, Teddy Bridgewater, the former quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, now with Carolina. And again, it happens where there's a running or a wide receiver or a quarterback chosen, and shortly after, their connector guy was chosen there. Robbie Anderson and Teddy Bridgewater going with the theme that I saw with Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy, and Ben Roethlisberger, Deontay Johnson, of one of them being taken, and then the thought of somebody kind of just jogging their memory or maybe reminding them that guy's still out there that's going to be playing with him. You took Zach Moss. I'm high on Zach Moss. I like him a lot. I actually brought him up when we were talking about Devin Singletary. Was that the guy that you weren't mentioning? Did you get the guy that you wanted?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened there.
Okay.
I was wavering between Garoppolo and him and taking Garoppolo on the way back. So I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have got Garoppolo on the way back. Those are some of the agonizing decisions that you have to make on the fly, and you have to have your act together to make a decision like that. Because if you make the wrong decision, you're going to have to live with it. And you notice, I've made a couple wrong decisions. I've come right out and told you, in my opinion, I made a bad move there. That was a mistake. Hindsight being 2020. But at the same time, I was thinking maybe I'll end up landing a guy like Gardner Minshew if Garoppolo doesn't pan out to me. And look who got picked 3 picks after me there. See, Gardner Minshew. So I was going to be okay either way. There were 2 quarterbacks that went. Actually 3 quarterbacks that went after I took Garoppolo. So again, you just never know. I may not have gotten Garoppolo, and then maybe that shifts everything else around. Well, I don't know what they call that, the butterfly effect, where every little thing you do has a ripple effect further down the road. Well, it's the same thing in drafting. And if you're flexible, you're going to be in a better position. If you know what to do under certain circumstances, if you trust your rankings. That's why a lot of people are like, well, this guy has this guy ranked this high, and this guy has him ranked 5, and this guy has him ranked 15. What do I believe? Do I take it down the middle and make it a 10? Well, no, you consider both sides, but find a person that you can trust. Find a person that's got a proven system. Find somebody who is doing well with what they're preaching, and they're showing you, and they're coming on live video, and they're talking about it. Go with somebody like that. Because you go with an average ham and egger, some kid fresh out of college who's making up the rankings in the sports department for one of the 4-letter networks because that's his gig. Well, I don't mean to brush it off that bad. Fantasy has come into play. There was a time when the NFL and NFL.com didn't acknowledge fantasy football. I remember that. I was like, these guys are making a big mistake. They're going to lose a bunch of money. Then they realized how much money there was in it for them, for advertisers, for programming, and all those things. So, they went back and adjusted. And again, it's just like we talked about before. It didn't go the way they thought. They went back and adjusted. Now they're back in the game. They run a pretty good fantasy site there at NFL.com, and a lot of people still use their tools. And these big networks, they have entire fantasy football departments. There's entire 40 or 50 men, I say men and women, crews that put up one fantasy football show, and there's a bunch of them out there. Well, I'll tell you something. There's also another one. It's on Facebook. It's on YouTube. It's all over, and that's our show every week.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike and I putting in a lot of work after over these last few years and doing exactly what we're doing here for you. And every Wednesday we have dedicated, and every Wednesday it doesn't matter if it's in season or out of season, because as Mike and I always tell you, in season or out of season, it's always football season, and fantasy never sleeps, nor does the NFL. I mean, if you really look at it, the NFL starts their games around the end of August, for the regular season, right in September time, and when they start in September, they go September, October, November, December, January, or end of December, beginning of January, playoffs, February, Super Bowl, and then, right after that, guess what? You start seeing everybody getting ready. They're coming off of the college football playoff, and we have pro days in March, right after, so February Super Bowl, March pro days, and then we start to see the draft right there, end of April, beginning of May, and then once the draft is done, we got rookie OTAs, we have OTAs, and different things going on with the teams. Then we have training camp, and then we have the preseason and the season. So it really doesn't stop, and fantasy football never stops for Mike and I. We dedicated ourselves to talking with you every single week during the season, and then we made the decision to talk to you every single week because our season for fantasy football is 365 days a year, and in a leap year, 366. So with that being said, every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, you have Mike and I, and we are always talking about fantasy football, proudly brought to you in the, not a, not one of, but the Fantasy Football Power Hour, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub, 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York, your home for all things fantasy football, to watch the games, and to just get some great food, get a drink, and hang out with friends, family, coworkers, and colleagues, go out on a date, whatever you got going on. It is a family-friendly sports bar, and it is not easy to find a place like that. They found a way to have kids' birthday parties, people watching games, and everything in between going on. I want to thank the Wildcat. And you of course, can order from them social distance-wise with takeout, curbside pickup, and delivery by calling 315-487-2222. And you can dine in, inside or outside on their little patio area around the volleyball courts at 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Mike and I are live looking into a league that is drafting currently, and as Mike stated, you have our show every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, the Fantasy Football Power Hour, that is an hour dedicated to you inside of the giant wake-up call with Dan Tortora behemoth that we have worked to create what we created over time. There's been a run on running backs here in round number 9. Antonio Gibson, Latavius Murray, and Jordan Howard. The thoughts on this, Mike, as running backs have been spaced out throughout this draft. You see them in green, so you can see how this board is looking. And running backs a lot in the beginning, the majority of the first round, and then we saw some happen in the second round, and then trickle down to a little bit here, a little bit there. Now we're seeing a giant run on running backs, 5 of them taken in round number 9.
Yeah, I was leaning running back. On the way back, I was thinking about Antonio Gibson. I know some people think that's early. I'm high on him this year. He's marching up draft boards. Not long ago, he was an end of the draft afterthought. Now I'm on deck here, and I see a couple wide receivers just went, breaking that up a bit. Sometimes when they zig, you have to zag. So sometimes you have to go against the grain. Although I have 2 wide receivers, I only need, 2 or 3 to start in this league. So I'm okay, because I'm okay with who's still on the board. Tevin Coleman just went, and I'm on the clock here, so just give me a second.
So that coming from Mike Sofka as we are having a live look-in at a draft as it happens to help prepare you for your upcoming fantasy football draft. Or maybe you just drafted, and this will help you have some ideas on waiver wire and free agency, or in general as you move throughout the season. Antonio Gibson, a lot of people high on him for the Washington Redskins. The Redskins do not have Chris Thompson anymore. They still have Adrian Peterson, and they have had a stable of running backs over the last few seasons and split time amongst a bunch of them, but now Antonio Gibson could potentially change that up if he can have success right away as a rookie. Latavius Murray, people higher on him than they have been in the past, which I like, that people are higher on Latavius Murray. He's an Onondaga County gentleman. He came here when he was 3 years old, and he grew up in my county. He considers this to be a home for him, and he was just on the show recently, and I'm very happy that Latavius is being taken a little bit higher here. I believe that he has more value in fantasy this year, and obviously a lot of people have agreed with me. Jordan Howard in Miami, Marlon Mack, Kerryon Johnson, Tevin Coleman right before you, and then you took and you've done kind of what I did, Mike. Actually, a lot of what I did in my drafts. You have 3 rookie running backs in Cam Akers, who can arguably be the starter with the Rams, Zach Moss, who will have time with Devin Singletary, I believe, and A.J. Dillon, who was drafted high in round number 2 by the Green Bay Packers in this year's draft. Tell me about what you got, because you and I have respect for these rookie running backs, and you just drafted 3 of them, and your draft looks very similar to one of mine as well.
Well, that's a good thing. I mean, it means you and I are on the same page, and that means, and again, I can't write this script before it happens. There's 15 other guys or women in the room with me, and we're writing this thing out all together here. So, you look across the board here, I have 4 solid running backs. Well, I have 2 wide receivers. I have 2 quarterbacks. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 quarterbacks left. I talked the game before about having a 3rd quarterback. So, again, I'm going to see what happens. But still, even if I don't get a 3rd quarterback or get a quarterback that I want, sometimes there's value in taking a backup way late in the draft. This way you're protected if one of your guys goes down. But then you still have to question the bye week. So, again, a refresher here, or if somebody joined us late, this is a league that has not only the quarterback position, but a super flex position. And for those of you who may not know what a super flex is, that's the opportunity to put a quarterback in that flex position. And even though the quarterbacks in this league only get 4 points for passing touchdowns, traditionally they're going to score a lot more points across the board than other positions. So it's to your advantage to have a quarterback in that super flex as opposed to the guy who you're playing against who may have a running back or a receiver who may be a 2nd or 3rd running back or a 2nd or 3rd receiver on their team.
Yeah, and you talk about receivers, Mike, you have 2 of them. What are your thoughts on the receivers going throughout this draft? You have T.Y. Hilton and Julio Jones. We just saw 3 more of them go at the end of round number 9. John Brown, Brandon Ayuk, and Mike Williams. What are your thoughts on the receiver situation?
Very much so that, again, like the quarterback situation, that's something that I'm looking at really strongly here on the way back. I don't know if I'm going to get the guys I'm looking for. That's just part of it. That's just what happens. So, again, I've got a couple things planned. Plan for the worst and hope for the best. And, usually it turns out for you if you're ready to go. It's just like anything else. You can go camping, but if you don't take all your camping equipment with you, when you get out in the wilderness, you're going to be like, oh, no, what happened? Yeah, well, what happened was you didn't bring your stuff with you that you thought you were going. You didn't prepare yourself. You weren't prepared for an emergency. You weren't prepared for this or that to go wrong or this or that to happen. So it's kind of like a microcosm of what life is. You really have to not only have your act together, but you have to be prepared to move. You got to be prepared if there's an accident or if there's a problem or something changes down the road. Life isn't easy. And it's even harder if you're stupid. So you got John Wayne said that, I think. So you got to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
I love that, and I'm putting that up right now. Life isn't easy, and it's even harder if you're stupid. I have to put that up right now. So I will. And you know what? At least Mike, the one thing that I do know when I put my head on a pillow at night, at least my name isn't the Washington football team.
Yeah, that's something else. That's another whole show in its entirety there. That's the train wreck waiting to happen again. I mean, they seem to go out of the frying pan and into the fire there. Apparently things are changing though in Washington, so we'll see.
Yeah, it definitely stuns me and makes no sense to me whatsoever. I mean, it's been a couple months since they announced that they were going to change their name, and they still don't have a name. So I don't know what the plan is, but normally when you jump out of something, you kind of have a good idea of maybe where you're going or where you're planning to go. So, getting rid of your name, pulling the name off the door, it's kind of like having a restaurant, and you say, okay, we're going to rename the restaurant, rebrand it a little bit, so they rip the name off the restaurant, but then they can't come up with a new name. So everybody drives by, and you can't have a sign up. You can't have a lit-up sign because you don't have a name. So there's no lit-up sign. There's no sign up on there. There's just a banner hanging that says, yes, we're open. And a lot of people are driving by thinking that this restaurant's closed because nobody sees a name on it. Nobody sees a lit up sign. They don't think it's there. So as far as I'm concerned right now, Washington, you claim to have a football team, but you're just a restaurant that a lot of us are wondering, are you taking orders? Can we dine in? What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, and I want to back up here. I was on the clock while you were talking there. I went ahead and took that third quarterback. A quarterback went just before me, and a quarterback just went right after me. And both of those teams now have three quarterbacks. That tells me that at least 5 or 6 teams aren't going to have three quarterbacks. So they're going to have to really be watching the waiver wire for somebody to go down, and they're going to have to hope that they're able to, through the free agent bidding process, outbid other people. That's another unique thing. Sometimes people have the waiver wire normally established by the reverse order of the draft. So normally, if you get the 12th pick in the draft and a 12-team league, you'll have the first waiver wire order. And then some leagues run it where the guy with the worst record continues to get the best waiver wire opportunity. And I don't like that because that tells me that guy didn't draft well. That guy doesn't have to draft well because he'll just get the best guys off the bench. That's a lazy man's approach. I like when everybody's active. Free agent bidding allows for everybody, even the first place team, to be able to buy their way into getting a free agent. So the way I like the most, though, is when it's constantly revolving. So in other words, you set it up. If in a 12-team league you had the first pick, you're 12th on the waiver wire. If you were 12th, you're first on the waiver wire. Once you get your waiver pick, you go to the bottom. You go from 1 to 12.
Yeah. And
then as people in front of you use up their waiver, then you march up. I think that's a fair way. But I do like the free agent auction bidding because, let's say, it's your backup quarterback. Your quarterback went down, the backup's up. You're going to put a lot more money into it than the guy who has 3 quarterbacks. You know what I mean? You're going to do what you have to do there.
Yeah, I think it's important, in the waiver wire, and like you say, the order of the waiver wire and having fairness in it and, utilizing it to your advantage. And, it should be that way, that if you're in last place, if your team's not doing that well, that you have the first opportunity to get better, I think is really important. First kicker was taken off the board. Mike and I have a rule about kickers. I read this off to everybody that joined our leagues at the Wildcat Sports Pub and was drafting with us, and I said it's very funny that Mike put on his cheat sheets that's right on the bottom. It says maximize your draft. Take a defense second to last and your kicker as your last pick. Well, Mike, I said that, and I jokingly said I think it's awesome that Mike physically wrote this because I tell people this and have said this for years upon years upon years. I think when we started the leagues at Hooters 10 years ago in Florida that I said these things, and still people took kickers and people took defenses. And where I in the past maybe freaked out a little bit when defenses were chosen, I just bided my time, and honestly, I got what I wanted. In 2 out of my 3 leagues, I got the Bears defense with Khalil Mack, and I'm totally fine with that. So, what are your thoughts on seeing that little purple square on the screen light up with knowing that somebody took a kicker in round number 10?
Yeah, it's just the way it is. Different people have different approaches. To me, it's kind of like the guy who keeps talking smack to you while you're playing the game of basketball. Let's say I'm playing basketball and my opponent is trying to get in my face and trying to get in my head and talk to me. Or in football, I'm a wide receiver and the DB is chatting me up. Well, let's say the same circumstances happen and I'm up 21 to nothing. Or we're up by 18 points in a basketball game in the 4th, and this guy's talking to me. I just point to the scoreboard. So in this situation, I point to my trophy case. I point to the bank account. I point to the amount of championships that I've been fortunate enough to win. I look at, your approach may work for you, but I'm just on a different trajectory. I'm on a different path than you, and I'm trying to do things a certain way, and I have certain rules to follow. The physics has rules. Gravity has rules. Math has rules. And when you break it all down, a lot of times this is just math. You cannot, no matter how hard you try, you cannot change the laws of mathematics. So you need to use all those things to your advantage and understand those complex situations, but be prepared to change on the fly. You know, one kicker's gone. You're going to see a couple more kickers go here before the last round. I guarantee it. No matter how good of players we have here, and that's okay. That's what they want to do. That's fine. Maybe that's their plan. And Harrison Butker is the top kicker out there, in my opinion. He's a high-powered offense behind him in Kansas City. I have him projected to outkick all the other kickers. And I have him projected to do that by 2 points a week better than the number 10 or 12 kicker. This is a 16-team league, so when I go down to the 16, he's a solid 2 points ahead of the 16. Well, you know what? I'm hoping that my other plays at running back, at receiver, getting that third quarterback are going to help jeopardize your team's points because you don't have a second quarterback to put in the super flex and you took a kicker instead. Or maybe my running backs or my wide receivers are going to do better. So, it's roulette. I'm putting my money on this number. You're putting your money on that number. One of us is going to be wrong.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, for me, I look at the fact of, who do I trust to win a game for me? A kicker might win one game for me a season, but I trust my running backs. I trust my wide receivers. I'm leaning on my flex to do that. I want to build as much depth as possible at a wide receiver and running back. I want to get at least 2 good tight ends, and I want to go from there. And in a league like this, where we're in a situation, like you said, where there's a super flex, and your flex can include quarterback, running back, wide receiver, or tight end, where some flex is running back, wide receiver, some is running back, wide receiver, tight end. The one in the league we're watching draft live in real time right now, they have the super flex, which includes the quarterback, and that inclusion should make you want to build your depth at all of those positions. And, as you see, Harrison Butker was drafted, and nobody took the bait, and nobody drafted a kicker after that. It continued to rock and roll. Jamison Crowder going from the New York Jets. Darrell Henderson Jr. getting drafted by the Rams here in the 10th round, which is good value because we don't know what he's going to become and, what he's going to be after his first season really didn't shake out that well. Tyler Higbee, very good value in the 10th round, in my opinion. Mitch Trubisky, a little bit of a questionable pick here because I don't think that he's going to remain the starter. Raquel Armstead, I love the value at 10th. Golden Tate from the Giants, not bad here either. Dede Westbrook was drafted of the Jaguars at the end of the 10th. And then we saw Justin Herbert go, who I think is arguably going to be the last rookie quarterback that we see out there this season. I think we're going to obviously see Joe Burrow at Cincinnati first. We will shortly after see Tua Tagovailoa, and then I think we'll see Justin Herbert after that. New England Patriots defense, we are seeing some people take defenses. The San Fran defense was taken in round 7. Not until round 10 did we see another defense taken with Pittsburgh. Then the Patriots, here in the 11th round, and Kansas City Chiefs. But before that happened, you took Curtis Samuel, somebody that I've looked at putting on my board as well. Well, he's obviously on my board. Putting on if I'm going to actually select him. What made you take Curtis Samuel later on here in the draft?
Just where I had my rankings, I was looking at a couple guys here. I needed my third wide receiver. I think I'm getting some value there. He's not the number 1, but he's got a good number 1 across from him, and I think he's better and faster than a lot of number 2 corners. He's got DJ Moore, who's just he topped the charts on the adjusted explosive index that I put out each year a couple years ago, and he hasn't faltered. He's proved to be what he said he was, and they got the quarterback change there in Carolina, and I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is as bad as some may portray him to be. I think he's better than the Mendoza line. Now, the Mendoza line's kind of like that median, that middle-of-the-road kind of guy. I think that guy is Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins has a strong team around him, but I think Teddy Bridgewater is just as talented as Kirk Cousins, and in some positions, maybe even better. Now, you look at what he's facing. He's in the NFC South, Teddy Bridgewater. Who's in the NFC South? 3 of the best quarterbacks in the league. Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, and who's the other one? Tom Brady. So there's a chance that they could be playing from behind a lot. If you're playing from behind a lot, what are you doing? You're throwing the ball a lot more in a lot of cases. So think of that. I mean, you got to think outside the box with stuff sometimes. So I like that approach there, and that's what I ended up going with.
Yeah, you know, Curtis Samuel, not bad there on value for you to get him where you got him. Mike's going to be coming back around, so I'll make some comments here as Mike's getting ready. Chase Edmonds, a guy I'm not really sold on in Arizona. He got drafted here. And then T. Higgins from Cincinnati, arguably the second guy to A.J. Green, could be the first because A.J. Green has had trouble staying healthy. So that's going to be an interesting thing to look at there and kind of circle. We did see a kicker go, a second kicker off the board here a couple rounds later, and Young Ho Koo from Atlanta has gone. The Baltimore Ravens defense going later. Denzel Mims, New York Jets wide receiver. Rashad Penny of Seattle. Mike Gesicki going very late in this draft, in my opinion. A lot of tight ends have gone. I like the value of Mike Gesicki. I would imagine, Mike, that you were going to pick him up if he was still there, but you ended up with Blake Jarwin. Was Mike Gesicki going to be your pick if he was there where you picked Jarwin? Would you have gone with Mike instead?
Yeah, absolutely. I had Mike Gesicki a full tier above Jarwin, and usually if somebody's a full tier away, I'll go to a different position. The theory being I'll get the higher tier at a different position, and that's okay that I lost out on that guy. Well, you know, it wasn't okay for me because I knew, as you saw, Jonnu Smith went 3 picks after me, so I knew I wanted to get another tight end. I also knew there's a lot of targets that were vacated in Dallas. Now, I know they got CeeDee Lamb. I know they got Gallup. I know they're stacked. I know they got Zeke. They're one football. I get all those things. But at the same time, I'm going for value each time around. I'm not worried about what you're doing. I'm going to make you worried about what I'm doing, and I'm not going to have to refill my roster each week. Even if my guys are on buys or even if they're injured, I'm just going to do like a lot of big time college programs. I'm going to do what they call in the NFL next man up. I'm going to fill the void. I'm not going to restock. I'm going to reload. And when I say that, I mean my gun, which is an offense. Now, if you look at something sharp here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 defenses have gone off the board already, and one team has 2 defenses. I just think that's a little much. That's a little early. I still have the number 6 defense available according to my rankings, the number 8 defense, the number 10, 11, and 12 defense according to my rankings. So, you know, find a direction that you're going to go, and don't be afraid. Steer your ship in that direction. And if it doesn't work out, you adjust. But, you know, I have different plans than other people, and that's okay. They may not remember. They can only have 2 defenses. So guess what? At the end of the draft, I don't even have to take 2 defenses because they can't have any more than 2. I'll have 2 to choose from at minimum. I'll take one and leave one out there, and maybe I'll stream that way. Maybe somebody else will drop theirs and pick that one up and back and forth. So I'm creating options for myself later on. Maybe I can take a skilled position instead of that second defense. Everyone else will be prevented from taking it, and I won't have to take it either. So you got to know your settings. You got to know the skills. You got to take what the draft is giving you, but at the same time, create hardship on the guys around you in the draft, and create hardship for the team you may have to play on any given week. Because I got news for you: if a guy's not on my team, if he's not starting for my team, I'd rather he be on my bench than across the field from me. Nothing would suck more. I'll just come out and say it like that. Than to have a guy you could have drafted beat you in one given week because you weren't smart enough to use that draft pick and put him on your bench. On your bench, he can't beat you in week 13 or the first week of the playoffs. So it's just interesting the way you look at things when you're playing fantasy football. You got to look at things from all angles.
Well, and I think it's really funny that you say that because we will talk about this more on the show, but I drafted Pat Mahomes, and then a couple rounds later, in a team that had less teams than the 16 we're seeing here, Lamar Jackson was still there, and I drafted him, and somebody said to me, they're like, oh, you know, you just put yourself in a terrible position because you can only play one of them, so, you know, now every week you're going to be, like, driving yourself crazy, and I was like, either one of them is 40 to 50 points a week, so in actuality, it's what Mike said. I have Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes on my team. I'm not worried that the guy on my bench, I'm not too worried that one of the guys is going to do nothing. One of them may have 50, the other one have 30, but I'm confident in both Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. And like Mike said, if they're on my bench, they're not on your team. And in any given week, together, they're like 100 points. They're anywhere from like 75, 80 to 100 points. So I don't have to play. I don't have to play a 50-point quarterback ever the entire season.
Yeah. So if you have both of them, that's a gain for you in a way. I mean, as long as you're smart with the other picks and as long as you're getting value everywhere else, that's not a bad strategy. I would lean toward, like that guy said, it's kind of a wasted pick, but at the same time, you got to read the room. You got to know what's going on, and you got to know what's going to be valuable for you later on in the year. I'm not wishing any injury or ill will on anybody, but players go down. That's what happens. That's what they do. So it's going to happen to some quarterbacks out there, and you're in a good position. Heaven forbid that happen. I mean, what's the odds of getting struck by lightning and having two quarterbacks go down? So when you look at those guys, well, maybe greater than others simply because of their style of play. That's okay. This is a game of chance. This is also a fun game, but it's more fun when you win. And I say 40 to 50% of winning is being prepared and having a good quality draft.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. To be ready for these drafts, and it was one of those things where I thought to myself, well, I like them both. I want them both. Should I do it? And then after I did it, I had a little bit of buyer's remorse, and then I said to myself, now I don't have to play either one of them. I don't have to. I don't have to ever think, oh my God, like I don't have to ever think like it's seeding for the playoffs and it's the week before the playoffs, and if I win I get first place, and if not I could drop down to third, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh crap, I got to play Lamar Jackson. I don't. I do not have to play Pat Mahomes or Lamar Jackson an entire season. That is enough for me to put confetti in my studio right now. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, I played against him last year, and I said to myself, I'm up by 44 points. And then I said, who does he have? And I looked at it and I was like, he's got Aaron Rodgers. I bet you he gets like 47 or 50. And sure enough, I went from leading by 40 to losing by 10. Aaron Rodgers scored like 56 points or 63 points in 1 week. It was absolute insanity, but that's what happens. I would rather have them on my team than have to see them on the other side. I know I'm very confident Pat Mahomes is going to guide your fantasy team, and I'm very happy he's going to guide. I much believe that Lamar Jackson's going to guide your fantasy team. Now they have an opportunity of guiding me and nobody else, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm on the clock here. Bear with me just a second here.
So as Mike is on the clock, I'll take a look at some of the picks that have gone on here. Justin Tucker, my favorite kicker in the league of the last many years, he was taken here. Indianapolis Colts defense, we're seeing a run on defenses, an early one in round number 7, one in round 10, and then we saw in round 11 we had 3 taken, and then there were 5 taken in the last round, around 12, and we saw Baltimore in that round go first, then Minnesota, then Tampa, then Seattle, then Chicago. Then the Indianapolis Colts just went. Hunter Renfrow, great pick in the 13th round, especially in a 16-team league. Great hands for him. We know that John Gruden, the Raiders head coach, loves his Clemson players. And this is a guy that Mike and I mentioned was like 5th on the depth chart. Some people probably thought he was on the practice squad. Like, is he even going to make the team? And the reality of it all is we knew who Hunter Renfrow was. People who do their homework, people who listen to the show, know who Hunter Renfrow is. And now the Raiders fully know who he is as well, as he shot up the depth chart to right around number 2. I like the Adrian Peterson pick late. Justin Tucker, I mean, I'm for picking a kicker later on, but they got him. Fitzgerald, old man wonder there, 13th round, love Larry Fitz. Paris Campbell, a little bit of rolling of the dice. You got a new quarterback in Indy, and maybe that'll help him out. I think it will. Nyheim Hines went after that, a guy I covered at NC State who can play a lot of different positions. Greg Olsen went, and then Irv Smith Jr. A lot of tight ends went early, and even though there's been a lot of tight ends that are gone, still value here in round number 13 with Greg Olsen and Irv Smith. And then, Mike, you went with Darrington Evans, running back for Tennessee, who will be backing up Derrick Henry, who just signed an extension and got off the franchise tag, has 3 years with the Tennessee Titans. What was your thought on Darrington Evans at this point?
Yeah, I'm looking at upside. I'm looking at he's the guy behind Derrick Henry. Heaven forbid something to happen to Derrick Henry. He's going to be that third-round guy. He's going to be that Damian Harris, James White type kind of guy. He's going to be the guy that they're going to integrate into the offense when they can. But don't fool yourself. He's not supplanting, Derrick Henry, barring an injury. And this is a guy who's going to have time under a guy like Derrick Henry. And a guy that plays the style of Derrick Henry doesn't always last very long in the league, unfortunately. Sometimes, you gotta do away with those tackles. Well, in an ironic way, Derrick Henry does that. He's got a forearm. He's got a stiff arm. He will bowl you over. Jacksonville has seen that several times. Last year, he did the same thing in 2 different games. I thought I was watching a rerun. I thought they were showing me the replay of the last game. He did it again with like an 80, 90-yard run. This is a guy who can run between the tackles. He's very effective. He's big-bodied guy. He can break it outside. He can take it to the house from any position on the field. You better be ready when you see a big, rumbling, stumbling guy coming down the field at you. If you're a DB who's probably one of the few guys that can catch him at that point, once he breaks through that line, once he breaks through that box, he's going to kill a DB. They got to try and dive at his legs. What does he do? He hops over him. He'll stiff-arm somebody. He plays the sideline to his advantage. And there goes Chase Claypool, who happened to be up top of my adjusted explosive index this past year. Great pick for a dynasty situation like this. He was definitely on my draft board real soon here.
Yeah, Chase Claypool, a guy that has been brought up here before with Pittsburgh, a wide receiver. I think it's, too tight. I was talking about the tight ends before. I love the Rob Gronkowski pick in round number 11, which was that was at the start of round number 11. No, I'm sorry, it was the back end of round 11. And then O.J. Howard was just selected at the back end of round 13. Really like that. I like both of these guys. They have Tom Brady as their quarterback. I think they're both going to be involved. Arguably, each of them could have somewhere between 6 and 8 touchdowns this season. So I like that value there, Mike. What is your thought on that first and foremost? And then second topic, which is totally different. What is your thought on Raquel Armstead, Devin Ezigbo, and Chris Thompson all getting taken from Jacksonville's backfield? Raquel Armstead and Devin Ezigbo taken back-to-back by the same team owner as well.
Yeah, well, that's a guy who, he's backing up his bet. That's a guy who, is smart. He's taking a chance on somebody, but he has a chance to double down and cover his bet, which is smart. And there's a name that just went here, Jerick McKinnon. A lot of people forgot about him. Some people forgot about Tevin Coleman. We saw him go a little ways back. There's another guy right there, Corey Davis. Technically the number 1 receiver. I think it's really A.J. Brown, but Corey Davis better have a big year. He's going to find himself out of a job next year.
Yeah, Corey Davis definitely has to shape up or ship out coming from Western Michigan. He's had plenty of time and has not come through for Tennessee. Tennessee, has been a little bit different these last couple drafts, I think, to their benefit, but they were going very high in the first round on wide receivers. Corey Davis, one of them, I believe he was drafted 5th overall, and so he has not shaped up, and so he may be in a position where we don't see him reside in Tennessee much longer. Jerick McKinnon for San Francisco, I mean, this is a guy that's gone through injury, so this is one of those concerning areas for him. But if he could stay healthy, it'll be interesting to see what he can do. Justin Jackson taken late by one of the teams here, the 4th team to draft in the 14th round. I like the Justin Jackson pick. We're seeing a very interesting thing with one of the teams that took not only 1, not 2, but 3 kickers back to back to back. Took Young Ho Koo as well as Matt Gay and Graham Gano. I don't know if they know something that I don't know, Mike. I mean, do you get 72 points for field goals from 60-plus yards? I mean, what's the deal here?
No, it looks like that owner either he got bumped out of the draft or he just left the draft. A lot of guys do this sometimes in online leagues. There's a little bit of, money involved. There's some tokens involved here, but right. His draft status at the top of the draft board is listed as auto. there's 3 guys like that, and 2 of the guys that are listed as auto are still in the room. So maybe they just don't know. Maybe they bounced out and got back in. Maybe they lost their internet connection. But this guy obviously picked his starters and was like, oh, I don't care. Well, I don't know what you're doing putting money in a hat, and I don't know what you're doing in a Dynasty league if you don't care where you're at the 14th round out of 18 rounds. This is where you could actually win or lose your championship right here. This is what separates the playoff teams from the non-playoff teams. It's just like on the field. Are you going to walk away in the end of the third quarter because you're up by 3 scores? Absolutely not. So why are you doing that to yourself here? I don't understand it, but you know what? That to each his own. Again, I'm going to do me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought one of the interesting things in one of the leagues here, too, is they drafted Jared Goff and then drafted Jalen Hurts, who is in Philadelphia, obviously thinking that, you know, if Carson Wentz goes down, here's the backup for him. But you're really relying on one starting quarterback, and the notion that the guy you drafted as his backup we might not see for 2 or 3 years. So what are your thoughts on that, going for Jared Goff and then knowing that Jalen Hurts as your backup is not a viable backup, at least right now?
Yeah, you know, and sometimes, and I can't speak for these individual owners because I don't know them well enough. I know I said before it's like poker, you got to know the room. Unfortunately, I don't. But sometimes these are homer picks. Sometimes these are guys, you know, oh, he went to the college I like, or he's from my hometown, or I root for the Eagles, so I'm going to draft an Eagle here, and in 3 years I'll have an Eagle on my team. I'm trying to win a championship this year, next year, the year after. My dynasty starts now. That's why they call it a dynasty league. I'm not playing for 3 years from now. I'm going to get hit by a bus next year. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm playing for now, and I'm playing for next year.
Yeah, you know, and it's very smart that you're doing that, Mike, because, you know, we only know that, and especially if we've learned nothing else, you learn during Corona times to appreciate the time that we have and the value of the time that we have. So, you know, whether it's fantasy football or eating a peanut butter sandwich or calling our mom or, you know, walking the dog or whatever it may be, appreciate the time you have and don't think that you have forever. Mike, you're up on deck, so I'll ask you this in a second. But I do have a question for you. Darius Geis, who was let go of Washington.
Yeah, that was an auto pick. That was an unfortunate auto pick there.
Yeah, very interesting seeing some of these auto picks. Jordan Love, Tyrod Taylor, and Jameis Winston, the only quarterbacks chosen by one team as well that went 5 straight rounds with a wide receiver, 6 out of the first 7 rounds drafting a wide receiver, and then having to, you know, get after it. Got Tyrod Taylor, who's a starter right now, Jordan Love, who's a guy that could be 2, 3, 4 years away, and then Jameis Winston, who is behind Drew Brees, really relying on Tyrod Taylor. This is one of those things where, you know, you have an unbalanced draft where you get really, really excited about one position, but you forget to take care of the rest. DeAndre Hopkins, Adam Thielen, Jarvis Landry, CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy. I like all those wide receivers. Jalen Reagor, you know, my jury's still out on that one, but I do like the receivers chosen by this team. But ultimately, in choosing those receivers, some of the questionable stuff happens at running back, and then at quarterback, definitely some questions I have about that as they move forward. They're really relying on the PPR side of things, really, really relying on their wide receivers. Matt Breida, there's nothing saying that he is going to be the guy. I think he'll be a guy with Jordan Howard and could eventually take over. But he has both of them. He handcuffed him, and he also handcuffed Raquel Armstead and Devin Ozigbo, and then Adrian Peterson. So all the running backs he has are sharing time with somebody, including his second-round pick and Nick Chubb with Kareem Hunt. So I think that's very, very interesting here. Mike, we just saw time run out. Did you have an internet issue connection? What happened?
No, I'm flipping between different players here, and it's an unfortunate situation. But, you know, if it's going to happen, I'd rather it happen in the 15th round. And even though it goes against the grain of where I want to be here with a defense, I could have done a lot worse than the Dallas defense. I could have done a lot better, too. But it is what it is. You know, again, you know, I'm bouncing around. There's Asiasi, who I was about to plug into my screen there. and see if I could draft him at this point, because I think he's going to have a year that people aren't going to believe. Somebody's got to catch the ball from that tight end situation. You remember the last time Cam Newton played quarterback? He usually had a guy named Greg Olson on the field with him all the time. New England knew they didn't have Gronk anymore. They went to the well and they did the smart thing. They got some water to drink, and then what they do? They got more for the way back. What did they do? Well, they drafted 2 tight ends. One of them's going to be the blocking tight end. One of them's going to be the pass-catching tight end. The pass-catching tight end's going to be Devin Asiasi. There's a lot of targets that Cam's going to want to share with the tight end. Bill Belichick, not afraid to throw the ball to a pass-catching tight end. They need help throwing the ball in New England. They got Julian Edelman. They got N'Keal Harry, who's unproven. They got Mohamed Sanu, who's, up and down. So there's a lot of unique things that are coming to play here this late in the draft. So it's always good to have your head on a swivel. And, it just goes to show you, I consider myself to be a veteran, of drafting. And as you saw, I timed out and it went against me. But again, I'm confident enough in the rest of my draft that I've already done here that, I'm going to be okay. Stuff happens. It is what it is.
Yeah, and as we look at this, as you move forward here, Mike, and look at the, as we're winding down this draft, for those of you that are watching, this is bonus coverage of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora in a live fantasy football draft for 2020, the beginning of a dynasty, and this is here with myself and Mike Sofka right here hanging out with you, talking about the draft as it's happening in actual real time. And some of these guys getting picked up later on, wide receivers, just goes to show you how deep wide receivers are this season. Looking at Miles Boykin going from Baltimore in his second season in the 15th round. We're looking at Traquan Smith, who I think is an absolute steal, coming from New Orleans, arguably the number 2 guy to Michael Thomas in New Orleans, and we know that Drew Brees spreads the ball around. That's great. Mohamed Sanu could be doing something, could be resurrecting his career in New England. Alshon Jeffrey, not a bad pick when he's healthy. Willie Snead IV in Baltimore did some good things last year. John Ross III in Cincinnati could be stepping up here, but T. Higgins, it might be the number 2 guy. Randall Cobb was taken as well in round number 16. And, Mike, this is somebody you brought up. I remember his name being on your lips, Devin Duvernay of the Baltimore Ravens. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, that's an incidental pick on my part. When I missed that last pick, it inadvertently put me back on auto, so I didn't mean to take him, but I'm not afraid of that pick either there. So it is what it is there. I could have done a lot worse. Again, you see me, I'm not fretting over this whole situation here because it auto-picked me Devin Duvernay. This is a guy who's got speed. This is a guy who can help my team in the future and may even help it sooner than that if he can get on the field. Can he block downfield? It looks like it's got me back assigned in without an auto-pick now that I've, refreshed my thing here. But again, 2 picks in a row that it picked auto-pick for me, and that's what happens sometimes in these drafts. Now, I'm looking ahead here. I got 2 picks left. I need a kicker. I can take a defense because I'm allowed to take 2, but why would I do that when I can take another skill position player? So right now, I'm going to have that kicker pick last. I'm looking ahead toward the end of the draft at how I'm going to play this so I don't screw it up. Kind of like I've made some mistakes before, but, it is what it is. So I'm going to look at other skill position players. Right now, I'm going to start looking at those guys. So when it comes back, I'm in position. I refreshed my screen. I'm back in the room. There shouldn't be any problems here. So, hopefully I'll get a good skill position here, player here late that may help me this year off the bench later on, or maybe he'll help me down the road in the future. It is a dynasty league.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, and people kind of just scraping at the bottom. Jamal Williams, a forgotten man in Green Bay, he was drafted, and as well as James Robinson, running back from Jacksonville, getting drafted here late as we're coming down to the final 2 rounds. Jace Sternberger, a great pickup, I think, in round number 16, the tight end for Green Bay, and Jimmy Graham for Chicago. I think Jimmy Graham's on his last leg, probably, more than likely. He's there, I would venture to say. Mike, it's still showing that you're on auto on mine. So I hope you're
Oh,
not,
wow.
I hope you're not on auto. Make sure you're not on auto because I'm still seeing you out there now.
It shows me that I'm not, but if I am, I am. Stuff happens.
Right.
It shows me that I'm in the room, so hopefully that won't be the case. It's worst case scenario. I'm going to get a kicker out of one of those two picks, and I'm hoping to get a skill position player coming back here soon.
Yeah, no.
I'm looking at probably a wide receiver, probably a running back, whatever I can find that fits what I'm trying to do. It's probably going to be a wide receiver. I'll let the cat out of the bag here. I'm looking at a couple right now, but again, I'm looking to get value. No matter where I pick in the draft, I'm always trying to get the value. Some people are like, "Oh, that's okay. I'll pay a little more or whatever." Yeah, don't do that. Why would you pay a little more? That doesn't make any sense. Just pay what you need to pay. Try not to overpay, but don't miss out either. These are perishable items in a draft. You're buying ice cream. They're scooping out ice cream. Are you waiting for your certain flavor? Are you holding one ice cream cone and waiting for the next one to come and the ice cream's all dripping down your hand? You got to know when to lick the side of that cone so the ice cream doesn't drip all over your hands. You got to know whether you're waiting. Are they bringing out a fresh new batch of chocolate chip ice cream? You got to know what's going on. All right, I'm on deck here. Let me look at what I'm doing here. I'm going to take a dark horse here. And the guy I'm going to take, I'll explain in just a second. I'm going to take this guy because I don't know who else is there. I think I know who's there, but, I don't know who else is going to be there besides the guys I'm talking about. So let's see if it picked them for me here. No, it didn't. It picked me a kicker. Must have been on auto draft there. Sorry about that, guys.
So we have that here, and with Mike, with that happening, I do want to mention some of the stuff that's happened. A forgotten man in Cleveland, 17th round, David Njoku, tight end, drafted, a guy out of Miami who had so much upside and is now just on the bottom of the barrel. Dawson Knox in Buffalo also getting drafted very, very late here. I think there's some potential. I think there's value with David Njoku, definite value in Dawson Knox. Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle. The thing I'm realizing about tight ends is as fast as some of them went, as I'm looking through the checkerboard of this draft and the gold pieces being the tight ends, as you look at this with me, there's a lot of value in tight ends this year. I'm looking at Ian Thomas and Jack Doyle and going, and I'm looking at Ian Thomas in round number 12, Jack Doyle in round number 14. I'm looking at Eric Ebron in number 15, in round 16, Jay Sternberger, and I'm going, this isn't bad at all. Mike Gesicki in round number 13. There's some good stuff that's been chosen here, and I'm okay with it.
There's the pick right there. Now, I'm not going to give up who I was trying to pick there. And by the way, that little Adam Vinatieri thing going on there, let me explain what happened. I'm not on auto pick. I just double-checked that. What had happened was I was typing in the player's name I was trying to get. And this is my first sleeper draft this year. I've done a bunch on other platforms. I have another one coming up here. And I punched in the player's name, and as I was doing that, I accidentally must have hit the enter bar when Vinatieri's name popped up in the screen. So, that's obviously another mistake. And, as we've preached before, we normally take the kicker last. But again, look where these accidental picks are. I ended up getting Dallas, not bad. Duvernay, not bad. You know what? I've had a pretty good draft. I made a mistake middle of the way through the 17th round. I'm going to obviously end up dropping Vinatieri for another kicker here, and there's going to be another kicker out there. I don't know, though. Looks like that one guy's got 3 of them. So I'm sure he's probably going to drop 1 or 2 of them here before the first week, and I'm confident I'll pick up another kicker here. But the guy that I was looking at still on the board, although that Gandy Golden pick, that seems to be a steal for me in a dynasty. I like that owner was able to scoop him up in the 17th round, late 17th, Antonio Gandy Golden. I think he has a bright future, and that's a great pick this late in a dynasty league.
And, the one I like the pick right before it, Anthony McFarland Jr. for Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah, he's got a lot of upside, but he's got, he could be a guy that's a boomer bust player for you. I'm not going to count on him, being over the top. But let me tell you something. Should something happen to James Conner, he could be down the first 2 down back. They're just going to, go run the ball. And then they got Benny Snell there, jack of all trades. He can take care of running the ball. He can take care of catching the ball. So there's some other opportunities around there. But I think McFarland's a boom or bust player. Personally, I'm staying away from him.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens there. There's a lot of guys in Pittsburgh, James Conner, Benny Snell, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, there's definitely a crowded backfield, which I would imagine.
17th round. I mean, how can you go wrong in the 17th round of a 16-team league?
I mean, still Jalen Samuels. There's a lot of guys there, and I think people can get excited about it because I think there's value with all four of them. But, right now, James Conner, I would say, is your number one, and your second thought is a Benny Snell because Jalen Samuels can push out to playing a hybrid type of position. So I still think he'll get utilized. Kyle Rudolph, a guy who was top 4 tight end in the country just, I don't know, a few seasons, 3 seasons back, drafted in the 18th round, Mike.
Something else, ain't it?
It's how the mighty have fallen. The David Johnsons, the Kyle Rudolphs of the world, so the Greg Olsons, just how quickly things can change with some of these guys. Mohamed Sanu, who really never caught on anywhere, is you seeing him just kind of drop off here and what's happened. And a lot of these rookies getting drafted high above guys that have played in the league that used to have those names and still people feeling really, really good. I mean, even a Tony Pollard drafted in the 8th round, 9th pick of the 8th round, coming to you out of Memphis to the Dallas Cowboys. And that's another one. He's backing up Zeke Elliott, and somebody didn't just take him; they took him high.
Yeah, that's and again, this is what happens. You got to be prepared for everything and anything because it's not like this is not like these guys are getting paid a salary to play fantasy football. Most people have day jobs and do other things. I'm in a fortunate position where I can spend a lion's share of my time with fantasy football year-round. So not everybody has that, so I get it. So some people are prepared, some people aren't. Sometimes stuff happens. Like it's happened to me a couple times in the draft here, and you live and learn and you move on. But, what do they say? I think I've seen this video time and time again from the Rocky movies where it's not that you got knocked down. It's how can you still get up after you get knocked down? No matter how hard you hit, how fast can you get back up? And that's just like this. I'm going to recover from these one or two little minor things. I think I've had a solid draft. I've enjoyed this league. I've enjoyed this draft so far. We're almost halfway through the last round here, and I think this could be a challenging league. And if you're playing against a bunch of people in your office and you think you're the best fantasy football player, that's great. But let me ask you something. If you're the smartest guy in the room, what does that say about you? It says you're in the wrong room. Okay? You're only as good as the people you play against. Get yourself out there and play against some tough people. Make yourself a better fantasy football player. Or just be the guy that donates to the fantasy football league every year. It's your choice.
Yeah, and to go off of your quote, I'm going to read it here, but somewhere along the line you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're not good, you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know that what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. That's the quote, baby.
Yeah, so that wraps up the draft. I do want to make a quick comment on and thank you for reading that full quote there. I love that. It's one of my favorite inspirational things. If you haven't seen that on YouTube or one of the other video subscribers, maybe flip back to one of those Rocky movies and find that. But the pick I made was the pick I was trying to make when I accidentally took Vinatieri. I took Marquez Valdez-Scantling, not because I'm high on Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but if you look at the receiver options that are in Green Bay, there's not many. We talked about Alan Lazard before. Devontae Adams is going to get the lion's share, but they're still going to have to throw the ball around. Valdez-Scantling has had moments of brilliance, and if I can get him in the 17th, 18th round of a 16-team dynasty, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Mr. Irrelevant for this year is Brandon McManus, the kicker from the Denver Broncos, who I think may have plenty of work on his hands with Melvin Gordon as well as Philip Lindsay and Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy out there helping the team to hopefully get into the end zone. Royce Freeman was taken very late. DeAndre Washington as well. And, like you said, you got Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Some defenses that were taken later on in the draft, too. We see the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Miami Dolphins, and the Arizona Cardinals defenses taken. Not a bad thing here. This draft was all over the place. You got to see some colors that were the same. You see a bunch of greens, and you're like, okay, there was a run on wide receivers. You see a bunch of blues, greens, you see a run on running backs. The blues, you see the run on wide receivers. The blues are all over the board. The greens are all over the board. And then the quarterbacks are kind of interestingly taken in little spurts. But I think one of the biggest storylines is the fact that as many tight ends as were drafted, I think that a lot of people got a lot of value all the way up to round number 16 or 17. I would argue there was still value at tight end all the way down, even to Kyle Rudolph in round number 18.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things, you look at round 11 when, Rob Gronkowski went off the clock at the last pick in round 11. I was targeting him for round 12. That's when I ended up I was going to look at Gesicki. Then he got taken. I was like, I got to take the Dallas tight end. They throw the ball to the tight end. And even though they say, Zeke's there and T. Lamb's there and Michael Gallup's there and Amari Cooper's there and there's only one football, they're going to have to spread it around. And, it is what it is there. So I'm looking for value at certain points. And the truth of it is Blake Jarwin's probably not going to start for me on any week besides Hunter Henry's bye week, which is, I'm not worried, and stuff happens. So, I think, if I look at my team up and down here, I'm pretty satisfied with the draft overall. And it's just like in the NFL. If I have a rookie quarterback, even Peyton Manning threw a bunch of interceptions, like 20-some-odd interceptions his rookie year. If I have a rookie wide receiver, generally speaking, it takes a rookie wide receiver 3 years to gel in the league. Now, that mold was broken by a guy named Randy Moss several years ago, and there have been a couple standout guys come in and break that mold again. But if you're going to take a chance on some rookie guys, especially in this year's draft, especially in a dynasty situation, I took advantage of some rookie running backs. I went ahead and I was able to secure Cam Akers in the third round in a dynasty league, which I think is huge. Le'Veon Bell, he's getting a little long in the tooth, but I think I'll be all right. But then I came back, I got Zach Moss, who some say could take Singletary's job. I got Tree Trunk Legs, A.J. Dillon right after that in the ninth round. They're saying, and you even said it, Dan, a lot of people are nervous about the Aaron Jones situation. So, every round that it was possible for me to get value. I tried to get value, and that's where you want to be. Let me ask you something. If you go to buy a car, are you going to get to the front of the line and beat everybody else because you're going to pay the most? No, you're going to try to get a deal on the car. It's the same thing here. You're trying to get a deal. You're trying to read where these guys are going. That's why it's good to track before you go into a league. Do a mock draft or two. Get with an expert or two. Get with some people who you trust and value their opinions and what they're able to do with that information. Find somebody you trust and follow that one thing. There's a lot of information out there. It can be information overload and confusing for a lot of people. Hey, this is a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun doing this. And like I said before, fantasy football is fun, but it's a lot more fun when you win.
Yeah, and it also interesting, you picked your running backs back-to-back all three times. You had two and then a break and then two and then a break and then two. And, so interesting to see that. Picking up the guys that you had here as we look throughout this draft and seeing, the way that things kind of shook out with all of this. Very, very interesting. A lot of rookies that are involved. I think this is the year potentially of the rookie when we look at fantasy football offensively. And it was great to allow people to see this and get a real look inside of this, and not just anything, but a 16-team league, because a lot of leagues are 14, they're 10, they're 8, they're 12. So, you got to see what it looked like to find value all the way to the final round of a 16-team league. So if you can find it with 16, then you should be able to watch a video like this and do it with 8 or 10 or 12. Mike, I appreciate it so much. Michael, Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com. We did this extra broadcast for you because we care about you. We want to help you out, and it's always about going the extra step here on Wake Up Call. So, Mike, thank you. You can go to Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, and you can click on Dominate Your Draft, choose that cheat sheet, and if you go to that cheat sheet and you click on PPR Standard, whatever your league is, and you type in the promo code SCOREFREE5, that's all caps, SCORE free, the number 5, all together, you'll get that cheat sheet for free, that $5 cheat sheet for free. And when you go on to Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com and you click on any of the paid opportunities that you have there through Mike Sofka, if you type in at checkout Orlando 40, that's Orlando in caps, the city, Orlando 40, you get 40% off of any purchase you make on Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com. I appreciate you, sir. I thank you for every Wednesday, and I'm so happy that we got to do extra. So, under promise, over deliver is what we do here, and I can sleep sweetly tonight knowing that we did yet another thing to try and help people out with their fantasy football.
Yeah, I feel great about it. I had a great time doing this. I appreciate you burning the midnight oil with me. It was just about a 2-hour draft like I anticipated, and I'm glad that we were able to do this. And, this is big boy football here. This is big boy fantasy football. So it's not for the faint of heart sometimes. It's not for people that get anxious. It's not for people that, can't make a plan and stick to it. So I'm just really glad we were able to do this and pull this off this year, and I look forward to following up with this draft, same league, being at the Dynasty, and exploring a rookie draft, which is something a lot of people may not have seen as well.
Yeah, no, very cool, and I want to give a big shout-out to Body Armor. This strawberry banana got me through this 2-hour draft and gave me some energy. So thank you so much to Body Armor, and thank you so much to all of you that are watching and listening to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. And you know that fantasy football comes your way on Wake Up Call every Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time minimally. We typically always go over. And you'll find us there, proudly presented by the Wildcat Sports Pub on 3680 Milton Avenue in Camillus, New York. Mike, have a great night. Sleep well, and I will talk with you very soon.
Sounds good, Dan. Talk to you later. Thanks.
And take care. That coming from Mike Sofka once again of Hall of Fame FantasyFootball.com, and of course my co-host for all things fantasy football all year round on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We hope that you enjoyed this very special first time ever. It's all about making history. Making history and then doing it again and again and again and again. Wake Up Call is something that I am always consistently looking at progression and always looking for that steady increase. So thank you for joining us for our first ever live look at a fantasy football draft. This is for 2020. It is a Dynasty draft, and you got a live look in real time, seeing 16 teams, or 16 owners, 16 fantasy football league owners draft their players in real time as Mike and I discussed it here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We never did anything like this before, and to this magnitude to start it off is something really, really cool and really awesome. So thank you. Thank you to Facebook for the platform. Thank you to all of the wonderful equipment and software and things that we have here. And a big shout out to all the companies I'm proud to work with. And thank you to you. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and we'll talk with you soon on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora during our normally scheduled times, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, listening on mixlr.com/wakeupcalldt and watching on Facebook Live on facebook.com/livenowdt. As I always tell you, find us on social media, Facebook at WakeUpCallDT, Twitter at CallDT, Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT, on wakeupcalldt.com, our homepage, and our website, I should say, and on youtube.com/WakeUpCallDT. God bless, no stress, do your best. We're all going to be all right. Talk to you soon.